We buy from farmers in Alabama, North Florida, Georgia, South Carolina, and we bring the product here. We produce over 30 different flavors. Most of them in the beginning were pecan related, but now we have anywhere from chocolate mint to peanut butter with milk chocolate, pecan caramel clusters to peanut brittle, just widely varied product line.
What's up, everybody? My name is Adam, and I'm the host of the UKnowAdamTsang podcast, the show that is dedicated on bringing on passionate people, learning about their stories, and delivering value to entrepreneurs. So if that's what you're interested in, go ahead and follow, like, and subscribe. You know what I'm saying?
How's it going, guys? Welcome back to another episode of the UKnowAdamTsang podcast, where you get to know a little bit more about people, passions, and all things business. Today, sitting across the way, I have Jake Tarver of Mascot Pecan.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Or is it pecan?
That's what I wanted to get into.
Let's talk about
that was
it.
my first. I wanted to set the record straight.
Okay.
I want your opinion.
Okay.
Because
my opinion?
Yeah, because
I ask your opinion.
I have a way around how to.
I'm sure you get that
both.
question all the time.
And it was a saying that came from my dad. But what do you think?
I don't know. I'm gonna say pecan or pecan. I honestly, like, in my normal vernacular, I usually say pecan.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I do too.
Okay.
And that's mainly a southern thing.
Okay.
But you would think pecan kind of comes from the northern part, but you actually have a lot of people in Alabama, that use pecan.
Okay.
And then there's also people that say pecan.
Pecan?
Yeah, or pecan, pecan, pecan. There's a lot of different sayings for it. But
that's crazy.
Kind of the thing we came up with, or my dad came up with to please everyone, is they're pecans when you buy them and pecans when you sell them. Because normally when you're buying from the farmers, everybody's from the south, southern, you say, well, buy your pecans. And then when you're selling them a lot, they're going everywhere.
Yeah.
So we usually say pecan. I have a problem where I usually say both without, even knowing.
Okay.
So I'll be saying a whole sentence, and pecan this, pecan that, and then I'll say pecan this, and I don't even really realize what I say anymore.
Yeah. I guess there's a balance, right?
Right.
So that's all about compromise. But we jumped directly into kind of like, the huge debate.
Yeah.
But tell me a little bit about Mascot Pecans.
Okay. Yeah, so I kind of set the story. So have you seen the movie Cars before?
I have.
Like the very first one where it was the whole like, oh, the interstate's coming through, the town's what are we going to do? It's kind of the same story. So back in the 50s, Highway 301, which runs through Statesboro, and it used to be the only highway that was north and south before the interstate. So there was a time before I-95. We don't know because it was before our time. But 301 was the only way you could get Maine to Miami, one way, one road. Okay. So along 301, through these towns, there used to be towns all through 301 that were, Statesboro, Glenville, Claxton, all the way up and down. And they used to be just pretty, big towns like Glenville. I don't know if you're familiar with the area, but it's a 2-stoplight town. It used to have like 5 motels that would fill up at night back in the 60s and 70s. And so my grandfather started a small gas station called the Mascot.
Okay. In Glenville.
In Glenville.
Okay.
Yeah. And it was right off of 301. So as travelers would come by, they would stop, get gas, buy some knickknacks, he was selling everything between fireworks, gas, coconut
Very
lamps.
entrepreneurial.
Yeah. So it's similar, like you see them a lot in Florida on the interstate now is, you walk into a gas station and you'll keychains and just a bunch of just junk that's like, a keychain that says Adam.
Yeah.
Like, this has a license plate.
Has my name on it.
I'll buy that. It was kind of similar.
Okay.
And then my grandmother, who she would, make little pies and cakes and hand shell pecans in the back and put them in little bags and sell them in the store. And
as
they
a food option.
Yeah.
Was there any like cooked food, or was that just kind of like just the pies and that sort of thing?
I don't know because I would have to see because my grandfather also used to own a hog farm. Okay. Back in the day, so maybe they were selling some meats and things like that. They did have what's called they called it the Dairy Ranch, which is similar to like Dairy Queen now. That was right beside, and that's where they would make food and sell milk and things like that. But really what kicked off was the pecans or pecans. My grandmother would hand shell them, put them in bags and sell them to travelers along 301. And she did that for a couple of years, and they would get letters written from people in, up north saying like, wow, these, the best tasting pecans I've ever had. Like, can you send me some?
What was she doing with the pecans?
Nothing. It's just back then, the grocery supply chain wasn't so instantaneous. Like today, you can walk into the store and get grapes from, all over the world,
Sure.
Onions from Colombia, everything. You can have any type of fruit whenever you want it now because, everything's in season along the world. We'll
Correct.
ship it everywhere. But back then it wasn't like that. So the pecans that were in the grocery stores up north were just, stale or old crop. There's a difference between old crop and new crop, which is, each crop every year, the pecan trees will yield a crop. And new crop is, the crop that came off that year, but you have to sell that through the whole year until the next crop.
Understood.
So there comes a point to where when the new crop comes in, last year's crop's now called old crop.
Okay.
So the crops of pecans that were shipped up north in the grocery stores, they didn't taste well. So when you came down south,
Because she was doing it
right
fresh.
off the tree,
And I guess
put
the
them in a
man
bag.
was good. Yeah.
So people were like, "Can you send us some?"
Okay.
Like, we really love them. So they kind of started a little mail order business where they would, hand shell pecans, put them in bags, and ship them to people up north and out west and things like that. And then it kind of spiraled into my, I can't keep up with, these hand crackers. So my grandfather bought a little shelling machine, that you could just dump the in-shell pecans in there and crack them open. And it just spiraled into what it is today.
Mm-hmm. And what is it today?
So today, Mascot is, we have 7 different production lines making candies, peanut brittles, peanut snacks. And, I bet you're thinking, how do you get from hand-shelled pecans to, a fully integrated candy factory?
Mm-hmm.
And that comes in the 90s when my uncle and my dad bought the company from my grandfather.
Mm-hmm.
And when you shell pecans, you have byproduct. Everybody wants, to a pecan, you have 2 halves.
Yeah.
So that's your full pieces that people want, because that's what looks the best. Put them on cakes, pies. Nobody wants the little pieces, or the mill that comes off during the shelling, and you have rot that you sell. You have to sell everything,
Sure.
or else it's not going to be profitable.
Sure.
So my dad had the idea, which he says, looking back on it now, is a terrible idea. But it's like, why don't we make candy out of the byproduct, the pieces and the little things. So they started making candies out of the products like that nobody really want. There wasn't a high demand for, so value added candies.
Sure.
And it spiraled into where we are today with 7 different production lines.
Wow.
And so it's come a long way from my grandmother's hands.
I know. There's so much to unpack in here. Let me just kind of start. So how many different items does Mascot currently have?
It's hundreds, really.
Really?
So to break it up, we have what I would say 3 different divisions. We have e-com, which is our website, mail order catalog business. We have commercial business, which is like restaurants, ice cream stores for ingredient use.
Okay.
And then we have retail, which is, our branded name in stores out, grocery stores and dollar stores, that kind of business. So that's where we break it up, really. Then we also have fundraising.
Okay.
So there's really 4. So fundraising meaning school, like you have a kid in school, they bring home a magazine selling wrapping paper, candy. We have a divisions that we bought back in 2007 called Scotts of Wisconsin, which was a candy company in Wisconsin that was really big in the fundraising business. They were going bankrupt, so we saw the opportunity there to buy the machinery and the brand name and build it back to what it used to be. And now we're one of the number 1 suppliers in that fundraising division. So if you see, you open up the magazine and see like peanut butter shaped bears or, caramel cups, that kind of stuff.
So this is now has moved past just the byproduct from pecans.
Yes.
Right.
Yeah.
Now you're really like candy production?
Yeah, it's about 50-50 between raw pecans and pecan, like shelling, ingredient wise, and candy. It's about 50-50.
That's amazing. When did all this happen? So what I heard in the story earlier was grandfather and grandmother kind of like started a demand for this by mailing out. So at that time, it was only whole pecans being sent out. And then when your father and uncle came into the business, they started working on the candy side of things.
Yeah.
Is that correct?
Yeah.
And then they got into kind of like the wholesaling to restaurants, all that side of the things. Yeah. And now you have kind of like, stepped into the business and kind of like, what is this new age that you're planning on bringing?
Well, my father and my uncle, they did a great job on building out that business, what we call private label. So making candy for other people. And we've seen, tons of people buying the product, putting it under their own brand. So maybe we sell you a chocolate, covered pecan in bulk, and then you take it to your facility and put it in bags and sell it in your store. And everybody's like, wow, these are the best. And I'm like, well, we made them. What how can we, start getting our name out there, and move further and further away from the private branded stuff, but you still have to have that because it's the core, part of the business.
Sure. At least for right now.
Right. And compete in that retail space. So when I came in, that was kind of the thing. I was like, look, this is what, we need to try to do. And it's a really tough thing to bite off when you're pretty much like, I want to go out there and compete with Hershey and Mars, and you're little old Mascot.
Sure.
And you have to build that name, that brand awareness. You have to have products that, differentiate yourself from Hershey's and Mars and Ferrari and all the big, big candy companies out there and compete for shelf space, which is just, it's brutal. It's, it's swimming with the sharks.
Yeah. So how has that experience been? I know that in a supermarket, really what people are paying for is kind of like positioning, right?
Yep.
Because as you are walking through the store, your eyes are level.
Yep.
So anything that's kind of like level with your eye, that is prime real estate.
Right. And most of the time in grocery and in some stores, they have what's called slotting fees. So, if you want this position on a shelf or you want this position on your stuff, you have to pay the retailer to put your product in there,
Okay.
And when you're competing, with the big guys who have all the money, they're just, oh yeah, throw that out there and put it on the shelf. It's really hard to compete. So that's where you have to, go back to what do we have to our advantage, family owned, batch made, that kind of thing. And then, design the packaging. We've gone through, since I started 5 years ago full time, we've gone through, probably 4 different packaging, design iterations to kind of see what niche fits, for our brand. And we've came to, certain designs that work, some designs that don't work, product size, ounce weights. You may come into a store and the buyer's like, we want 7 ounces of product, in this bag. And you're like, got it. And you get it out there, it doesn't sell at all. And they're like, oh, it didn't work. And it's like, well, if we would have done, a 4 ounce, or if the shipping display was a 30 count instead of a 100 count, the sell-through would have been better, So it's a lot of, trial and error.
To try to lock that in.
Right, yeah.
Got you. I want to change direction again a little bit and really talk about kind of like this entrepreneurship within the family. Right? It seemed as if your grandfather and grandmother were entrepreneurs. I mean, that's plain and simple. You said that they kind of did this gas station that kind of morphed into this pecan business, so forth and so on. Was that ever shown to you when you were growing up?
Definitely through my, my dad, working. That's all I've ever done my whole life was work at the company.
Yeah.
Which,
even when you were younger.
Yeah. So, I mean, coming out of high school, getting off of high school at, 3 o'clock and then going to work for a couple hours, painting doors. I started working we have a shop where we, build and fabricate things, which another thing, which we're lucky to have is a lot of, what I call shade tree mechanic engineering. So we're able to like build and weld and cut and torch everything and build things that we need, to give us that competitive edge without, having to go out and buy a, $300,000 machine, whenever we can help, build something that gets the job done enough to get the customer base first, then go out.
And then go out and secure the machine. Nice.
Yeah, so I started in, working in our shop, learning how to just weld and use plasma cutters and kind of build. And that's kind of always what I like, the engineering side of it. And that's kind of the dynamic between my dad and my uncle. And my dad is more on the business side, sales and management. And then my uncle is on the engineering side, making sure, everything keeps running, fixing the machines. He's a self-taught engineer, didn't go to school, taught himself how to, wire up machines and PLCs, and, really, really smart guy.
That's awesome.
And then my dad went to Georgia Southern and got a business degree, and, started working for his dad at the company, and he hasn't done anything either. So since, hasn't worked anywhere else.
It's interesting to me, because, a lot of times they say, oh, don't get into business with your friends. You always hear that. And then the close second one, or maybe this is even before that, don't get into, business with family.
Right.
And, I am also in business with my family. It's very kind of like, I think it's an advantage. For you, why does that misconception why is that out there?
I think you have to have defined roles of who does what, and kind of let that person manage that side of things, and that's where I think my dad and my uncle, really fit together, is because my dad was, sales and, figuring out product designs and stuff, and then my uncle was, engineering, figure out how to make it run. And that's kind of where you have, problems in this type of business, is always marketing never listens to production, and production never listens to marketing.
Yes.
So, you come out and it's like, I want to make this type of product and we got to do this and that. And it's like, well, we don't have any machine that does that. It's like, figure it out.
Yeah.
And that's kind of where it's fit, well, because they each have defined roles of what they do.
Are there ever any, I want to get into the tea a little bit, but, are there ever times when there are arguments?
Definitely. Yeah. Everybody has arguments on ways they think they should do things. We're all, hard-headed. Everybody thinks their idea is the best. And it's, that's the good thing about it, is just kind of, debating on, ideas on how to do things, mainly like, when we're expanding in production, me and my cousin, we've worked in the production lines, and seen how things flow in the production. And our dads are, in the offices, making sure everything else is running good, and we're on the floor too. And we see, well, this doesn't really work right. So when we go to add on and build something else, let's make sure we focus on that part of the business, that part of the production, to make it work better. And then you kind of got to go back and forth of, well, here's why I think this is better. Here's why, you think this is better, and then find that common ground.
I think for me, one thing that I've always kind of geared towards is, I know that the argument will happen, because obviously the experiences that someone has versus the experience that I have are different.
Right.
That's just the reality of it. Especially when you're talking about, the elders, if you will.
Yeah. But I also think it's easier to have these arguments with family than it is like friends or a coworker, who's not family. Yeah. Because I think at the end of the day, you're still family. So no matter how heated the argument gets,
you still have to settle it.
You still have to settle it.
Well, I was saying,
whereas like with friends or people, acquaintances, it's just like, get out, we're done.
Well, I think for me, like what I try to remember is, regardless of what the argument is, I know that on their side, they also, at the end of the day, want to improve the business. And I think a lot of times what happens is, when people are kind of going back and forth, they lose sight of that. They're like, oh, it's more about the ego, right? It's, oh, I want to be right, as opposed to, is this what is best for the business? There's arguments that happen in any sort of kind of like relationship or friendship or whatever, business relationship, that it's something that does happen. But if you can't realize at the end of the day what the motive behind what is happening, that's, I think, when everything becomes skewed. Yeah.
You have to kind of look at, like, what's the end goal that you're trying to accomplish? Did you get there? Then it doesn't matter whose idea it was. You got to the end goal, move on,
That's right.
And figure out something else to do next.
That's right. Tell me about kind of some of the challenges that you guys have faced in this process.
We've had a lot of challenges as far as meeting, deadlines. So the time keeps going on. Sure. So, if you're setting up a production line, say we purchase a new production line or trying to build a new building to increase volume. Yeah. So we're the Mascot is placed on my grandfather's old farm, so we have land to expand in all directions. So when you're trying to, for instance, we purchased a company or the production assets of a company in Norfolk, Virginia called Old Dominion Peanut Company.
Okay.
And we were tasked with, all right, it's December, we're done with our busy time. We have to figure out how to go to Virginia, tear apart their whole factory, build a factory
to house
the equipment,
Okay.
figure out how to make it run, and then get that all ready for the next, and then orders are going to come in June and July, and we have to be in production on a new product, production line that we've never ran before.
Uh-huh. How long did you have?
You have from January to June to essentially
like 4, 5, 6 months?
Yeah.
Well, who established that? Was that?
It was kind of just,
because you needed it.
Right. It was like if we wanted to make, revenue that year on this product, facility that we were buying, it needed to be ready. So it was kind of figure out who's going to be sorted with what, who's going to Virginia with a box of wrenches and going to take that apart all the machines, because we're not going to pay somebody to do it when we can do it ourselves. So me, my uncle, and a couple of employees that we have with us, we drove to Virginia, stayed there for, a week or two, just putting things on trucks and then sending it back to the plant. And then we had some people, we had some worker at the plant that were working on building the building, working with the contractors to get the electrical ready. And we got really lucky because there was a guy who worked at the plant. His name was Larry Kegg, who was kind of the know-all of all the equipment. Him and my uncle are very similar as, self-taught electricians and know how everything works and can build it. So he helped us kind of figure out where everything went and build it back. He has this like raggedy little plane that he flies in and comes up.
Super cool.
So he flew in and helped us get it all. But we got it all running, on time and made product, and it ended up working out. But we're always stressed with deadlines, I'd say, because between June and December, we're just nonstop making candy, getting orders out that we don't have time to think about, what are we going to do next year? So when January hits, it's kind of like, all right, what are we going to do? Are we going to, are we going to do this, that? If we're going to do that, we need to, get it done as quickly as possible. So, find the guy to pour the concrete, find the guy to build the building.
It's an orchestra, right? Like
right.
It's a symphony, if you will. Like you're constantly kind of like moving things back and forth. Tell me this: what do you think is the most important skill for an entrepreneur?
I say just being able to work with people. Going back to like what we said, just your idea might not be the right idea, but did you achieve the goal that you were trying to achieve? And just being able to, talk with people and work together to achieve a common goal, I would say is the most important skill to have.
How about successes? We talked about some of the challenges. What has been the most rewarding point of your career at Mascot?
As far as me personally, I'd say, seeing our product, with our brand name in stores, big retailers sitting next to, Hershey's and Mars, seeing our brand there would be a big accomplishment. But there's still a lot more water to tread. Yeah.
Love that. What if for people that have never tried Mascot before, how would you describe the experience?
I describe it as, we call it a little taste of history. We've had these recipes and products since my grandfather, and grandmother started. So not a lot of stuff has changed as far as the way things are made. And yeah, so I'd say tasting a little bit of history, old-fashioned candy. Yeah.
That's kind of like the brand that's being presented, right?
Yeah. Batch made, real ingredients, no additives, just straight up candy.
Straight up candy.
Yeah.
Straight up candy. Talk to us about maybe some of the different ones that have been there, like historically.
So any items with pecans, are going to be dated the furthest back. So our pecan caramel clusters, which is just caramel and pecans covered in chocolate, chocolate covered pecan, simple.
Classic.
We oil roast them and cover them in salt, and then enrobe them in high grade milk chocolate. That's a staple. And the cinnamon glazed and sugar glazed pecans are kind of the ones that date the furthest back.
Mm-hmm. And is that's like your grandmother's recipe?
Pretty much, just their style of how they made it. There's nothing new to coating a pecan in chocolate. It's kind of just that's what they did, so that's what we kept going with.
That's right. What do you think is in the next up for Mascot? What do you hope to take the company?
I'd say just keep tackling the big retailers. Getting our product out there. Working along with retailers. I think what really was a benefit for us was when the pandemic came, a lot of these big retailers, they weren't able to keep up with demand, so they discontinued a lot of items. They just stuck with, these are the key items that we, bring the most revenue. We're just going to stick with those for right now. Mm-hmm. Their lead times were, just way too long, so certain retailers got pushed out. It's like, oh, you don't do, pretty much for the big retailers where it's like, oh, you don't do, $20 million with us. Sorry, we don't need you. So that kind of made them look to people like us who, have the ability to what we say is, if you don't want it, don't order it, because we're going to ship it. We're going to get it done immediately and ship it out. So I think that was a big plus for us, was just allowing retailers to find us and be like, hey, how have we never heard of this company before? And you guys can get us the stuff on time, work with us. You got teams that can manage artwork and do all that stuff and production, know about machinery. So it's kind of a one-stop stop essentially for these retailers to get what they need.
That's great. Mm-hmm. So 5-10 years down the line, where's the company then?
I would see us, maybe importing more candies from overseas, because you get to a point where you can only scale so big in the area that we're at. You can only find so many people to employ. So you have to find new ways to grow the company. I think that is going to be importing. And finding, if retailers say, being a spot for retailers to say, I need, an Oreo cookie substitute, that's not Oreo, so I can make it, our own brand. It's like, okay, well, we have a company overseas that can make that, and we can source it for you. We'll bring it in and ship it out. Got you. Yeah.
Got you. Where does one go for Mascot pecans?
I'd say for the common retailer or website, you could get it online.
Which is?
MascotPecan.com.
Okay.
Yep. And then we're in dollar stores, so all the dollar stores with our peanut brittle. So the Old Dominion Peanut Company with production assets that we bought, that came with a peanut brittle manufacturing process. And it's all continuous cook. We make 11,000 pounds a day of peanut brittle. So I think there's only 2 machines that are like this, and we're the only one that have it operational at this point. So I think it's safe to say we're the largest manufacturer of peanut brittle in the country.
That's awesome.
So we're in all the dollar stores with our peanut brittle. We're coming to Tractor Supply with their private label, so making candy for them under their label. That's what we're working on now. It'll be ready next year. And yeah, online.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Just go online.
Yeah, order, ship direct to consumer.
What is your favorite candy?
Favorite candy? I'd probably say the chocolate covered pecans. Yeah.
Classic?
Yeah, just classic, keeping it simple.
Love it. Well, thank you so much for coming to the show. Yeah. I really appreciate your time. Thank you so much for telling us the story of Mascot. Definitely. Right? I think that is very inspiring for entrepreneurs, because I think more than anything, it's being able to give something back to the family. Right. And to see it maintain after, generation after generation, I think that's a great thing.
Yeah. Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. Well, that's the show. Thank you so much. Anything you'd like to leave the audience with?
Buy Mascot Pecans.
Buy Mascot Pecans. You heard it from the man himself. Appreciate it.
Thanks.
Cool.